Now, some of you will recall that Jack drove the new Dacia Spring in France earlier this year, and he absolutely loved it. Well, now I've just had this, the new Dacia Spring right-hand drive UK model delivered to my house, and I'm going to take it for a little pootle. So I wanted to find out what it's actually like to drive a really small, really light, 4-seat, 4-door electric car in the UK. This is the all-new Dacia Spring. And welcome to the Fully Charged Show. So the first thing that really struck me as soon as I started driving this car is the feeling of the weight of the car. This feels like a light car that's just gliding across the road. It feels very light, and that is like amazing. I really feel connected to the way the car is moving, and Jack would have a much better way of describing that, but I can sense that this car is, because of its lack of enormous weight, I feel like I'm really in control of where it goes, but I'm having to be a bit careful because it is a lighter car. It just feels like it's skipping along the road like a dainty rabbit. Now, the one thing I would like to do, because I'm a bit obsessed with those things, is to have an update on the screen in front of me of how many miles I'm doing to the kilowatt hour, or how many kilowatt hours to the 100 kilometers or whatever. Just a bit of that. I bet it's got it somewhere. It'll be on that screen somewhere. I'm not going to find it now, but that is not essential. What's essential is what's showing, which is fantastic. That is really, really clear. Okay, very, very easy. Had no idea how to do that. Hadn't looked in the instruction manual. Cruise control, I'm hoping it's adaptive. I just literally pressed the button, set, and it set it. So I'm now set to do, in a moment, 50 miles an hour. Very sensible speed. That is lovely. That is so simple. One button you press and it sets it at whatever speed you're doing. I recently drove the Citroen e-Berlingo. Has wonderful cruise control, very easy to use. Not adaptive, no. So that means you're set at 51 miles an hour and there's a car in front of you that's doing 45 and you'd run into the back of it. Slightly alarming. But this, I don't know whether this is adaptive, because obviously there's a lot more technology required for adaptive. So I'm now going to catch up with a car that's in front of me. I'm doing this under controlled conditions. I'm not going to run into the back of it, but I'm just checking to see what happens if it does slow down when it sees another car. Got a feeling it's not going to quite manage that. I mean, that, for a car of this this level of cost, I think it's going to be doubtful. It's still approaching the car in front. It's not slowing down. No. Okay, it doesn't have adaptive cruise control. Fair enough. So this car comes with a 25 kilowatt hour usable battery. And when I heard that, I went, oh, well, that's sort of similar to the Nissan Leaf, which is the very first electric car that I bought. And that was back in 2012, so 12 years ago, nearly 13 years ago now. And that car was a lot more expensive than this. Well, that was early days of electric cars, and the battery technology and the battery maintenance was really basic in those days. No battery heating or cooling, it just was there, a big lump. And a Nissan Leaf cost £22,500 in 2012. But if you put that through an inflation calculator, which I really enjoy doing, 22,000, the spending power of that in 2012 now would be £33,297.37 today. So almost 3 times more than this car costs. And then you think, oh, well, it's got a similar size battery, it probably does the same range. No, the range, the real range of a Nissan Leaf, even in its absolute peak condition, was between 60 and maybe 80 miles at the most on a lovely summer day if you drove really carefully. Very limited range, realistic range, 60 and 70 miles. Between 60 and 70 miles. The real world range on this is between 110, I think, is reasonable on a cold day if you're driving down the motorway, to about 150 plus on a nice warm day if you drive carefully. In town, if you drive it in a city, which is exactly what this is designed for, then a great deal more. And I just think that what we're seeing as well is not only the energy density of the batteries, but the quality of the batteries and the software that uses that electricity. But the battery pack in this car physically is tiny. The whole of the ground floor of the Nissan Leaf was a big battery pack. This is a little box at the back underneath the rear seats. It's nothing. It's tiny. And it's much lighter, and of course it's much, much cheaper. We're finally seeing the results of cheaper batteries, allowing manufacturers to make cheaper cars. This is anything but a luxury long-distance tourer. That's not why you would have this car. This car is for living in an urban environment where you want to be able to park on the side of a street. It's narrow, the turning circle is amazing. It would be so easy to use this car in a town. So I'm going down a big hill now near where I live, and it's always fun going down this hill because you get a lot of regen. And I didn't know whether this car would tell me it would add miles to it. Not all electric cars do, but when I was at the top of the hill, I had 95 miles of range, and I've now got 100. Isn't that nice? And that's just from going downhill. 101. Ooh! What it reminds me of is olden days cars. When I was young, and you'd buy a knackered old combustion car, and it would not have any fancy gizmos or anything in it, and it would be a cheap car because that's all I could afford to buy. This feels a bit like that. It has got some buttons, which are very nice, but not very many. And these now work. I remember one, the first Dacia Spring that Jack drove had loads of buttons and none of them did anything. So that was a really early model. This has been refined up to a level that it needs to be. Because you've got to remember, this car is cheap. It's one of the first proper, cheaper electric cars. To get a car in 2024 for basically 15 grand is amazing. So, charging the Dacia Spring, pretty easy really, just plug it in. It charges at 7 kilowatts, so you on a Type 2 connection, that's really common. For people who've never driven an electric car, that's the most common charger. This is the idea, I think, with this car, is you charge it when you're doing something else. So if you can charge it at home, obviously that's where you're going to charge it most of the time. But now there's more and more destination chargers this size that aren't super quick, but they would add 40, 50 miles while you're doing something else. You go and do yoga at the leisure centre, or you're going shopping, or all those things, or you're parking the car while you're going to the cinema or going out, whatever it is. And what we need is loads and loads and loads of really simple chargers on the wall that you can plug your car into that are easy to pay for. That is a really critically important thing. You can rapid charge this car. It's got CCS. It will rapid charge at about 35 kilowatts, which is not what you would classify as fast. That's actually slower than the 12-year-old Nissan Leaf, which did charge at 50 kilowatts. And if you think, there's a lot of cars around now that will charge at 150 to 250 kilowatts. So you would, 10 minutes and you've added a couple of 100 miles kind of picture. This is slower, but it still does it. So you can charge faster at a rapid charger. But the other thing it does, which a lot of cars are doing now, but I'm really glad it does that, is it does vehicle to load. Let's have a look at that. So I just thought I'd plug in something that would show that it works. So that is one of the studio lights we use here. So, it would boil a kettle. You could make some toast with it. It would heat a little hot plate, so you could do a little wok cooking when you're camping or something like that. I mean, it doesn't do vehicle to home or vehicle to grid. It just is at the moment vehicle to load. But clearly, this is a thing that all cars are going to come with in future. It's got a battery in it that would last for days. It would run this light for about a week. What's in the battery even now? So that's a useful thing to have. But overall, what I think is this is I just find this car delightful. That's my review of it. It is a delightful car. I don't think I'd want to I wouldn't want to drive to the other side of Europe in it. That would be a little bit of a challenge. You could do it, but you think, well, there's other cars that are probably a bit nicer to do that in. But for using a car, if you live in a city and you've got a car and you need a car, this is a brilliant choice. There's no argument now about going, oh, I can't really use an electric car because blah, 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 blah. All those excuses are boring. This is cheaper, it'll last longer, it goes further, it uses much, much less energy. It's much better for everyone that you drive past. This is fantastic. This is a brilliant step forward. Well done, Dacia. That's it. As always, please tell your mates about the Fully Charged Show. And if you have been, thank you for watching.